大家都在期待的 WWDC 2023终于到了，那这一次当然有一个非常令人期待的产品诞生了，也就是 Apple Vision Pro。那就让我们来检视一下 Tim Cook 是如何在产品介绍当中所用的一些字、修辞，还有以及语言的组织结构。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. Another Apple WWDC has come and gone. And like a lot of the ones before it, it was over-rehearsed and underwhelming. Except for one part. That thing that you know, literally the internet and the world blew up over. The Apple Vision Pro. Today, we want to talk about how did they introduce the Apple Vision Pro and what can we learn from this introduction that made someone like me, who went from an Apple AR device, bleh, to, oh my God, I think I want one of those for $3,500 US.
其实对我来说最惊讶的是，连 Sherry 都点头说他想要一个，因为我在心里无法把 Sherry 跟这种 technology geek， 因为 Nick 在我们办公室是 tech geek 嘛，他什么东西呢？他一定要一个呀，就是个阿九喜那个。
他中午吃饭的时候都在看那个 tech review，
对，所以你就知道他是 tech geek， 然后没有想到 Sherry 也想要，但是你为什么会想要
？Because it's so beautiful.I think it's just Apple always know how to design a product that everyone wants. And it's actually like, if you look at any like fashion related news website, it's there. Everyone talks about it, even in the fashion industry.
你会在公众场合戴着吗？
我觉得会啊，超酷的耶！
真的假的？
美金3500块表示我有那个身价。
所以，那这样的话，对你来说，这是一个它的价格其实是一个 status symbol。
Well, I think for the first generation, it's definitely a status symbol. I'm not sure about the rest of it, right?
Yeah. They're going to have like Apple outfits. You know it. There's going to be like matching things. People, I'm sure, going to make accessories. It's going to be a whole industry.
I'm thinking like the headband situation can in like different colors.
Oh my God.
Eventually.
This was a surprise. Not only would Sherry want one, she will wear it in public.
Yeah, absolutely.
Surprise.
Absolutely.
So what was, so it must have been something in their introduction that worked for you. Because you watched it, right? I mean, you didn't watch all of it.
No.
I don't think any of us should watch all of it. Why would you do that with your life, right? But what was in their introduction that was impressive to you?
The only part that I really watched over and over again was where Tim Cook talks about it and he introduced, right? And I mean, it brings me back to Steve Jobs days where he just stands on the platform and have one slide behind him and then talks about this one more thing, right? 虽然他讲的时候我就觉得哇蛮 rehearsed 的感觉It's but 我觉得他在介绍这个产品这一段我觉得可以让大家来学习一下
So there's a few things that we just wanted to pull from Tim Cook's introduction and share, especially in this month talking about the language of luxury and the language of premium, where Apple is quite good at the way that they use language to describe things. And two things that really stood out to me was something we've covered before in other Apple keynotes, which is the use of rhetorical devices. Also, the way that they frame. In the past, Andrew and I critiqued Apple a lot on just having no framing, just feature dumping in their WWDC. But when they pulled out this new platform. They actually did frame it. And that was part of my excitement switching from, like, I had no interest in Oculus. I had no interest in PlayStation VR, despite being a gamer. Anything VR, AR, I'm just like, ugh. I get a headache. It's not that interesting. But then they reframed the entire thought process. And from everything we've read from Ben Thompson to Marquise Brownlee, it's like, no, this is a computer. This is not an AR device. So getting into that, plus just the wording choice and the language in general is definitely up to Apple's standards.
Quick, Nick, when we were bashing Apple's presentation, what were they announcing? Because I don't even remember. 所以这就告诉你，你如果没有好好的做这种 reframe，然后把一个东西，把一大堆 feature，把它 highlight 起来，变成重新去 reframe， 去好好的去传达，然后把它变成记忆点。其实人家很难记得欸。
I don't remember the content. All I remember is the device, which wasn't something we really pushed on. But it was actually, we were complaining a lot that they were talking about all the new features of the last iOS update.
Oh, yeah.
And to be honest, I could not name any of them.
Yeah, I could.
Right? Like, I probably use them now every day. But if you ask me, it'd be like, what iOS feature came out in 2021? I'd be like, I don't know.
Apple Vision Pro, you'll remember it.
Yeah.
Can you say again, like, what did you think about VR, AR before? And what do you think about it now that you think is fundamentally different? And that came as a result of Tim Cook's, or I mean, Apple's entire team's ability to help us see this thing in a new way.
For me, it was them framing it out as spatial computing. So Tim Cook starts his section on the Apple Vision Pro talking about AR. He actually says, I believe that augmented reality is a profound technology. He frames AR, right? So this is where most people are like, oh, okay, Apple's making AR device. But he does something very specific there. He's like, it's a technology, right? AR is a technology. But then when he introduces the product, Apple Vision Pro, it is not an AR glasses, right? It's not a competitor to Oculus. They bring out this entire idea of spatial computing. To me, once it becomes spatial computing, you have my attention, right?
Well, I mean, what about that works for the two of you?
Well, obviously the word computing, that just really separate, the competitors to what they're doing. And also the word spatial. I thought that was really interesting. So spatial, S-P-A-T-I-A-L, not special, spatial, right? I thought it was really interesting that this is a word that they kept on repeating. And this is something that they wanted to use on how to describe this new technology.
And back to your earlier question about, it's like, when I think of Meta, or I think of like Oculus, I think an AR device or a VR device. So it's about living in virtual reality. Honestly, no matter how Mark Zuckerberg tried to frame it as like a work tool, etc., I mostly just saw it as like, that's a gaming platform. And if you like VR gaming, great, you have options. But if you want to do other things, no matter how much they tried to push the work or the spaces of Meta, that never really caught me. But I think that's where Apple was really smart, is they walked away from, okay, we're making an AR device. They're just saying like, AR is a technology. But what this is really about is doing your computer in reality, actually, with the AR side. When you watch the videos, you watch the introduction, you feel like this is just one step closer to Minority Report style, where everything's in front of you and you can just move the screens around. It feels more productive as opposed to gaming related.
Yeah, it definitely feels productive. I mean, most of the things, activities they introduced were productivity related. And yeah, I agree. There's the word spatial computing. I think, Sherry, you pointed this out, so you can talk about it a little bit. The parallelism that they introduced in their language is when spatial computing actually like caught my attention. Breaking Apple into 3 periods and using each one of their iconic devices or each of their iconic products to introduce a different era of computing.
So to what you're talking about, here's what he said. So in the same way, Mac introduced us to personal computing, and iPhone introduced us to mobile computing, Apple Vision Pro will introduce us to spatial computing. 所以我觉得他在这个部分他也正好用到了所谓的 parallelism, right? 他从以前的 Mac 到 iPhone 一直到现在的 Vision Pro 他都能够用这种很 framing 跟 rhetorical device 能够带到好像从以前的历史一直到现在我们的 future。
而且他这样讲确实很好，我再回去想 Meta 在做这件事情的时候， Meta 把 focus 摆在其他地方嘛，因为他就 Meta 自己改成从 Facebook 改成 Meta 变成完全在讲 Metaverse， 那 Metaverse 就变成完全是像 Nick 讲的那个 It's the virtual world that you go into, right? 然后他们其实没有特别有效的去 brand 自己的产品，就连 Quest 搞不好有蛮多人都不知道说Quest 是属于 Meta 是属于 Facebook 是同一间公司哦，大家可能不一定知道，对不对？那 Apple 从以前到现在很会做的一件事情，就是他在做发表会，除了被我们骂到烂的那几个之外，他们其实还蛮会去对特定的 technology 或者特定的 device 做一些 keyword selection， 然后去做 branding 的。就像他们连产品的命名都还蛮厉害的，像是 Air， 我现在一讲 Air 大家大概都知道是什么了。现在 spatial computing 或者是他们用一个字 blend， 也是其他的不太像，你不太会去注意其他的公司他们在做他们的 presentation 的时候，他们有特别的去把一些字把它选起来，然后那些字等于就有点属于他们的，让人家有记忆点。
Yeah, 所以在这个 WWDC 里面他们就常用了 blending 这个字， So blending digital content with the new world, right? That's one thing. 但是在其他的部分他们也说了 It's a new kind of computer that augments reality by seamlessly blending the real world with the digital world.
And even their other language will start to play with that. For example, it's the first Apple product you look through and not at, right? So there's that idea that you're blending in with this device. It's not just a standalone, like I look at the virtual world or I look at the real world. This is like the true promise of AR, but they're really playing into this blend thing with everything that they talk about. The other thing that, back to the statement that Andrew and Sherry were sharing earlier about, Mac introduced us to personal computing, iPhone to mobile, Vision Pro to spatial. The other thing that's really smart about this is it grounds people to follow what's going on. If someone's like, oh, it's great, it's just another Apple device, who cares? But they're actually pointing out it's like at the start of every technology revolution, we have built a product that was a part of that. Because, and this is in front of a bunch of developers, most developers are aware that there are certain things that have drastically changed technology. Not the first, but one of the major ones was going from large, completely fill a room down to desktop computing, but then moving into personal laptop computing. Apple has been at the front of that from the very beginning. Obviously, mobile phones, Apple made a big thing about that. And now the next revolution of how we're going to do computing, they're just pointing out. Especially in a time where everyone's talking about AI is the next big technology platform. That is the conversation for the last year. And now Apple may look like, oh, you're doing AR? That's so 5 years ago. But now it's just like, no, it's spatial computing. This is the next thing. And everyone's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. 虽然他们在 AI 上还是蛮烂的。
Yeah.
Apple 不知道为什么就是没有办法弄好 AI。然后他们还要指出另外一个地方，但这个我觉得比较跟，我不知道你们觉得怎么样，这个比较跟 Apple 的产品设计能力有关，他们就是真的产品就是很会设计，所以他在 presentation 上面的话也会让你有一点 elegant 的感觉。是什么？其他的这种 AR glasses 啊或是 VR glasses 啊都会给你一个 controller 嘛，你拿在手上在那边挥舞，对不对？ Apple 就像 iPhone 出来的时候 Steve Jobs 说啊，你看那些手机还要用个 stylus， 然后你又搞丢，不知道他跑到哪里去，谁要用 stylus 啊，我们就用手就好了。 Apple 现在用这个也是用你的手，你的眼睛，还有你的声音就好了。Everything that you already have. You're like, that's pretty elegant. I have to tell you, I did because for one of our investment possibilities, I did like a whole technology survey of all the possible technologies, the patented technologies I can tell you, I did not know which one was superior. I did not have a sense of like, oh, well, yeah, obviously, I don't want to have anything on me. I don't want to wear anything. I just want to use like what I naturally have. I didn't have any of this sense. 然后我现在看他们的 presentation, 一看就觉得, oh yeah, yeah, this is natural.
It makes complete sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Right. And I love how they used the word to describe that, right? They said, you control Vision Pro with the most natural, intuitive tools, which is like, yeah, of course, it's so natural and intuitive.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I love how they use certain words like, your surroundings become an infinite canvas. It's like, oh my gosh.
Canvas,
right, yeah. I love the way they describe that. 我觉得他用那个字很聪明，就会让人觉得 oh my god, 好像我整个视野就是打开了。Right? What I see is what I can touch.
And I think these are building like the two things you guys just talked about blended together. Really goes back to that earlier point of this feels like a work productivity tool. When you're wearing a device and you have a controller, you immediately go to, this is about gaming. But when someone's like, you put on these glasses and then you just use your hands and eyes to interact with the world, and then all of the things that they show you are productivity related, except for the end where they get into entertainment or gaming, but they open with, this is about productivity. This is spatial computing. If they had started with entertainment or they had started with gaming, you would have just chunked it as Apple's really expensive version of Oculus.
Right.
But because they're like, this is productivity, you use your hands, you use your eyes, you have meetings online, you're like, oh yeah, computer.
所以我觉得在这一次的一个 WWDC 呢，我觉得不只是 framing 修辞还有用字 I have to give it an A+, specifically for the Vision Pro. I did not watch the other part, I have to say. I skipped over to this part.
That's fine. This was the most interesting part. I skimmed the other pieces like, you know, I am a big fan every time they come out with a new computer. They came out with the 15-inch Air, and you're just like, oh, cool, they made another computer. Okay. But with the Vision Pro, you're just like, oh... Let me see if I can budget for this by the end of the year. Well, we highly recommend you go back and watch this specific section. Of course, there's commercials, there are reviews out there, but actually looking at the keynote presentation around the Vision Pro and really getting a sense of why is Apple so good at framing out brand new platforms and brand new technologies in a way that stands out compared to everything else? We hope that you enjoyed our little discussion on how we feel about this, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.